Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. Senator Bob Menendez, Democrat of New Jersey, announces he will resign in August following his conviction on federal bribery and corruption charges. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle resigns today, one day after testifying before a House committee on the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump, during which both Republican and Democratic members of the committee said she should step down. Vice President Kamala Harris holds her first campaign rally as a Democratic presidential candidate in Milwaukee, in the battleground state of Wisconsin. President Joe Biden says he'll be giving an Oval Office address to the country Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on why he chose to end his candidacy for reelection and endorse Vice President Harris. The Democratic leaders of the House and Senate, Hakeem, Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer, both today endorsing Vice President Harris. Former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, holds a teleconference to criticize the vice president's record on immigration and border security. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is asked about the vice president's work on foreign policy, and he says she is deeply experienced and respected. House Speaker Mike Johnson criticizes the vice president for planning to not attend Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress on Wednesday. And the U.S. House continues work on fiscal year 2025 spending bills, but it looks like they're not going to get to all the ones the Republican majority had planned to pass before the August recess. Story from thehill.com, New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez will resign from the Senate next month after being convicted in a bribery scandal last week. The Senate on Tuesday received Menendez's resignation letter and entered it into the record. He'll step down effective August 20th. Menendez faces potential decades in prison after being convicted on federal charges of bribery, acting as a foreign agent, and the rest of the 16 counts he faced for allegedly accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes from business associates, including the owner of a company that prosecutors said benefited handsomely from Menendez's influence over U.S. foreign policy. That was from The Hill. When the Senate met this afternoon, the letter of resignation was submitted. You'll hear Senator Peter Welch, Democrat from Vermont, presiding, and the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, on the floor.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
I understand that the chair has an announcement to make.
The chair laid before the Senate a communication regarding the resignation of Senator Menendez. Without objection, the letter will be printed in the record and spread upon the journal.
The letter from Senator Menendez to Governor Phil Murphy reads in part, "While I fully intend to appeal the jury's verdict all the way and including to the Supreme Court, I do not want the Senate to be involved in a lengthy process that will detract from its important work. Furthermore, I cannot preserve my rights upon a successful appeal because factual matters before the Ethics Committee are not privileged. This is evidenced by the committee's staff director and chief counsel being called to testify at my trial." Senator Menendez's seat is up for election this year. He has opted not to run as a Democrat. He had held out the possibility of running as an independent. But when he does resign August 20th, the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, a Democrat, will have the opportunity to appoint a temporary senator for the remainder of the term, the remainder of this year. And the governor putting out a statement. Today I received a letter from Senator Bob Menendez informing me of his intention to resign effective August 20th, 2024. I will exercise my duty to make a temporary appointment to the U.S. Senate to ensure the people of New Jersey have the representation they deserve. Story from USA Today. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle resigned Tuesday, 10 days after a lone gunman's near assassination of former President Donald Trump shook confidence in her ability to lead the agency charged with protecting presidents, candidates, and other VIPs. The veteran Secret Service official's departure comes just a day after she endured withering criticism by bipartisan lawmakers at a House Oversight Committee hearing Monday, at which she admitted the July 13th incident was the biggest security failure in decades for the storied protective agency. Numerous committee members, including top Republican James Comer of Kentucky and Democrat Jamie Raskin of Maryland, said she needed to step down and accused her of refusing to provide basic information about the attack and failed efforts by the Secret Service to stop the shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, before he opened fire. That was from USA Today. This news broke just as House Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican from Louisiana, was finishing up a news conference.
Thank you all so much. Thank you so much.
Can I get your reaction? Director Cheatle is stepping down.
She just resigned?
She just resigned. Can you say how this changes oversight of the assassination attempt now?
Well, she must have been watching our press conference. I'm glad she did the right thing. Look, our reaction, the immediate reaction to her resignation is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats. Now we have to pick up the pieces. We have to rebuild the American people's faith and trust in the Secret Service as an agency. It has an incredibly important responsibility in protecting presidents, former presidents, and other officials in the executive branch, and we've got a lot of work to do. The task force that we'll be putting together is going to be very important. As I said, they have three responsibilities: to investigate what happened, the debacle that happened 2 Saturdays ago, to hold those accountable. It certainly was the director, Cheatle, but there may be others in the line of authority who are also culpable in what happened and the errors and mistakes there. And finally, to ensure that those mistakes do not happen again. The stakes are too high. It's a very dangerous time. We need the Secret Service to be acting, to be performing at the top of their game, and we'll ensure that that happens. I hope that the interim director or whomever is appointed to replace Director Cheatle will be very sober-minded about the responsibility and take into account the very dangerous times in which we live. We'll do everything we can in the House to ensure that that's true, and I think our task force's work just got even more important. So we'll give you further comment as this develops. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
House Speaker Mike Johnson at a news conference. The resolution to create that task force on the attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump is expected to be debated and voted on by the House on Wednesday. The task force would have 13 members chosen among the membership of the House, have subpoena power, and must issue a final report by the end of this year. And the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas did announce that the Secret Service Deputy Director Ronald Rowe will become acting director. In her resignation letter, the now former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle says, "As your director, I take full responsibility for the security lapse, and I do not want my calls for resignation to be a distraction from the great work each and every one of you do towards our vital mission." The House Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar of California at his news conference said the resignation was appropriate.
The head of Secret Service just resigned. Can you speak on the bipartisan efforts to, have Secret Service acknowledge what went wrong there?
I think members on both sides of the aisle were shocked by the events and the assassination attempt, obviously. It's important that the Secret Service accept some responsibility. I know that there is a number of investigations that are continuing, internal and potentially external from the department itself. Members on both sides of the aisle called for her resignation, and I think that was the right decision.
Congressman Pete Aguilar, Democrat from California, the House Democratic Caucus chair at a news conference. President Biden putting out a statement, "Jill and I are grateful to Director Kim Cheatle for her decades of public service. She has selflessly dedicated and risked her life to protect our nation throughout her career in the United States Secret Service. We especially thank her for answering the call to lead the Secret Service during our administration, and we are grateful for her service to our family. As a leader, it takes honor, courage, and incredible integrity to take full responsibility for an organization tasked with one of the most challenging jobs in public service. The independent review to get to the bottom of what happened on July 13th continues, and I look forward to assessing its conclusions. We all know what happened that day can never happen again. As we move forward, I wish Kim all the best, and we'll plan to appoint a new director soon." That statement from President Biden. And former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee this year, posting on his Truth Social media platform, "The Biden-Harris administration did not properly protect me, and I was forced to take a bullet for democracy. It was my great honor to do so." The U.S. House Homeland Security Committee held a hearing today on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump with Colonel Christopher Paris, Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner. One of the witnesses, Chair Mark Green, Republican of Wisconsin, asked him about that building which the alleged shooter climbed on to fire the shots.
The AGR building, did your guys on the ground there ever voice concerns to the Secret Service for not putting somebody on that building?
So I suppose the best sequence of events that I can give you is that PSP was notified by email on July 5th about this event. There was an initial planning meeting where we had commanders present on Monday, July 8th. So over Tuesday the 9th and Wednesday the 10th, those commanders that we designated, basically our orders are from the front office, my team on down. You know, we work collaboratively with the Secret Service, collaborate, give them what we can. The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Present at that meeting were the two commanders that were tasked with both staffing the security checkpoints on the interior of the secure perimeter, as well as the commander who was going to be in charge of the motorcade. But in addition to that, a PSP area commander was on that walkthrough, holding the rank of major.
Could you share a little bit of insight? I appreciate the timeline, but could you share a little bit, because I only have about a minute.
I apologize.
Yeah, the specific to the AGR building.
So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
Okay. All right. One last quick question. Real quick, I mean, I'll let you comment about it. The slope of the roof, would that have prevented a sniper from being up there?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Witness Colonel Christopher Paris, Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner, questioned by the House Homeland Security Committee Chair Mark Green at today's hearing. This is Washington Today. The Milwaukee Journal-Constitution writes Vice President Kamala Harris will campaign in the Milwaukee area Tuesday, the first rally of her own presidential campaign. Backed by top Wisconsin Democrats after President Joe Biden exited the race Sunday, Harris has visited the battleground state 4 other times this year and 8 times as vice president. But her Tuesday trip has newfound importance. Instead of rallying for Biden's reelection, she's now campaigning as the presumptive Democratic nominee. Her trip to Milwaukee was announced just after the Republican National Convention ended in the same city, but before Biden dropped out and endorsed Harris as his replacement. That was the preview from the Milwaukee Journal-Constitution. Vice President Harris spoke at West Allis Central High School.
Ours is a fight for the future. And it is a fight for freedom. Generations of America's, generations, and we have to remember this, the shoulders on which we stand, generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, Wisconsin, the baton is in our hands. We, who believe in the sacred freedom to vote, will make sure every American has the ability to cast their ballot and have it counted. We, who believe that every person in our nation who should have the freedom to live safe from the terror of gun violence, will finally pass red flag laws, universal background checks, and an assault weapons ban. And we, who believe in reproductive freedom, will stop Donald Trump's extreme abortion bans because we trust women to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do. And when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law. So, Wisconsin, ultimately in this election, we each face a question. What kind of country do we want to live in? A country And to your point, do we want to live in a country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate?
Vice President Kamala Harris, Democratic presidential candidate, campaigning today in Milwaukee. Story from the Washington Examiner. Now that President Joe Biden is out of the race, politicians, special interest groups, and labor unions are all quickly endorsing Kamala Harris, except for the United Auto Workers. UAW President Shawn Fain said his union is going to take its time before it decides whether to endorse the vice president. Fain said during an interview with MSNBC's Jen Psaki, "We're not going to rush in and just throw it out there. We want to have a fruitful discussion when we meet, and I think it's important we do that. We owe that to them." While Fain proclaimed Biden to be the greatest president of my lifetime, the most pro-labor president of my lifetime, the labor union did not endorse Biden for a second term until 9 months after Biden announced he was running for re-election in April 2023. That was from the Washington Examiner. Former President Donald Trump, Republican presidential nominee, posted Monday night, "Lion Kamala Harris, the Biden-appointed border czar who never visited the border and whose incompetence gave us the worst and most dangerous border anywhere in the world, has absolutely terrible poll numbers against a fine and brilliant young man named Donald J. Trump. Be careful what you wish for, Democrats, MAGA 2024. Donald Trump held a teleconference today talking about Vice President Harris and immigration.
Last month, it was reported that more than 50 radical Islamic terrorists are loose in the United States after being let go through the open border, right through our open border, and Kamala and Joe Biden have no idea where they are, who they are, or anything about them. I don't think they even care. In her entire time as vice president and border czar, Kamala has reportedly never spoken to the chief of the Border Patrol. You can ask the two gentlemen right now. Probably she's never spoken to him. She visited the border only a single time, far away from the epicenter of the invasion. You don't even call it a visit. She went to a place that has no problem and was there for a very short period of time. So essentially, she never visited the border as we know it. As a senator, Kamala Harris endorsed the radical left crusade to dismantle ICE. And ISIS, these are incredible patriots. These are brave, brave people. Very few people could do a job like that, and she wanted it dismantled. She compared our patriotic ICE agents to members of the KKK. She suggested they were members of the KKK. She supports the total decriminalization of illegal border crossings and making illegal immigration the equivalent of a parking ticket. She raised her hand in favor of giving free taxpayer-funded health care to illegal aliens, but not to our soldiers and our people that have served our country so brilliantly, so valiantly, who are living on the streets. She supports mass amnesty and citizenship for all illegal aliens. She wants everybody to get amnesty, 100%, even if they're criminals, which will obliterate Medicare and Social Security for American seniors. That will be the end of Social Security and Medicare. Kamala Harris also voted in favor of deadly sanctuary cities, which shield illegal alien criminals, murderers, and gang members from deportation and arrest. And as weak-on-crime prosecutor in sanctuary jurisdiction of San Francisco, Kamala refused to seek the death penalty against anybody, no matter how devastating, whether it's MS-13 gang members, no matter how bad the killing was, the murder was, no matter what they did, she refused to have the death penalty.
Donald Trump, former president and Republican presidential nominee, part of a teleconference today focusing on immigration and border security. During the Q&A with reporters, one asked about whether he would debate Vice President Kamala Harris if she is the Democratic presidential nominee.
And our first question will come from Bill Melugin with Fox News. Please go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you for your time. If Kamala Harris does end up
Bill
being the Democratic nominee, yes, sir.
Go ahead. We got to get the name pronounced right, Bill.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's all over the place sometimes. If Kamala Harris does end up being the Democrats' nominee, will you commit to debating her at least one time?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'd want to. I think it's important. I'm not thrilled about ABC because they're truly fake news. I watched last night they're actually trying to make a hero out of Joe Biden when he was the worst president in history, and they were doing things like with Kamala, like what a wonderful thing it is that she is running. She is not the candidate that they should have. You know it, I know it, we all know it. So, I'm not thrilled with ABC. I guess they commit, but I have at least equal say, and I don't like the idea of ABC. I would be willing to do more than one debate, actually.
Donald Trump on a teleconference. Story from Newsweek. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump appears to have switched his nickname for the vice president from Laughin' Kamala to Lyin' Kamala in two Truth Social posts on Monday evening. The article from Newsweek says, known for giving his political opponents nicknames, the escalation in tone coincides with Harris emerging as his most likely Democratic rival, replacing President Joe Biden, who announced he would not seek re-election on Sunday. A reporter asked the vice president's husband, the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, about this while Emhoff was visiting a reproductive rights clinic in McLean, Virginia.
As the election gets going, President Trump has already started attacking the vice president. Your reaction to the names he's calling her?
That's all he's got. Look, you heard the vice president yesterday making the case against Donald Trump very clearly. Laid out the case directly and in a compelling fashion. But she also laid out a vision for the future, a vision where there's freedom, where we're not having to talk about these issues of today in this post-Dobbs hellscape that Donald Trump created. So we need to, yes, we're going to prosecute the case against Donald Trump and his lies, his gaslighting, his during COVID, the dereliction of duty, inciting an insurrection, and all those other things. We're going to make that very clear. She's going to be able to make that case. But we're also going to move on from this type of environment, this Dobbs, where freedoms are taken away, where autonomy is taken away, where they're telling you can't read this book, they're telling you can't learn these facts, they're telling you can't vote. All that is going to change, and it must change. You see the enthusiasm, you see the excitement, you saw the money raised, you saw the party coalesce. You saw the broad base of support that she had in just 1 or 2 days because she's talking about an America that we all have a place in. And that's why Kamala Harris, who I'm so proud of, I'm also so proud of the president. I got choked up yesterday in Wilmington when he called in. All of us did. What a great man. Love Joe Biden. But Kamala Harris has united the party. She's going to unite the country. She's going to earn this nomination. You see that happening, and she's going to win this election. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, at a clinic in McLean, Virginia, joined by the Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra, talking about reproductive rights. Story from Reuters, Vice President Kamala Harris opened up a marginal 2 percentage point lead over Republican Donald Trump after President Joe Biden ended his re-election campaign and passed the torch to her. A Reuters Ipsos poll found. The poll conducted on Monday and Tuesday followed both the Republican National Convention, where Trump on Thursday formally accepted his party's nomination, and the Biden announcement on Sunday he was leaving the race and endorsing Harris. Harris, whose campaign says she has secured the Democratic nomination, led Trump 44% to 42% in the national poll, a difference within the 3 percentage points margin of error. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Republican from New York, the House Republican Conference Chair, has been an outspoken supporter of the Donald Trump candidacy. At a news conference day in Washington, she discussed the presidential race.
Last week in Milwaukee was the most exciting, unifying, and strongest Republican convention in modern political history. The American people are rallying around President Donald J. Trump and his America First agenda. Compare that to the Democrat Party that is in absolute freefall. Backroom donors, Democrat elites, and their stenographers in the mainstream media conspired in a direct attack on democracy, which overturned the will of 14 million Democrat voters who elected Joe Biden as their nominee. And make no mistake, the American people know that Kamala Harris owns Joe Biden's catastrophic and failed policies, from the inflation crisis to the energy crisis to the crime crisis. crisis. And the number one issue facing Americans, no matter what district across America, is the border crisis. And Kamala Harris is Joe Biden's open border czar. By every metric, Harris has failed to secure our borders, advancing far-left Democrats' failed open border policies and the needs of illegals over the safety of American citizens. Yesterday, I introduced a resolution condemning Kamala Harris's role as Biden's open border czar. Every elected Democrat is responsible for this border crisis, along with every other aspect of Biden's failed and feckless record, which brought skyrocketing Biden inflation, surging violent crimes, chaos, and weakness around the world.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Republican from New York, the House Republican Conference Chair at a news conference today on Capitol Hill. Story from CNN, the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for the Democratic nomination for president during a news conference in Washington on Tuesday. As the top two Democratic leaders on Capitol Hill, Schumer and Jeffries' endorsement shows how quickly Harris consolidated support after President Joe Biden ended his reelection bid on Sunday. That was from CNN. Those two leaders held a joint news conference. Senator Schumer went first.
When I spoke with her Sunday, she said she wanted the opportunity to win the nomination on her own, and to do so from the grassroots up, not top down. We deeply respected that, Hakeem and I did. She said she would work to earn the support of our party, and boy, has she done so in quick order. Vice President Harris has done a truly impressive job securing the majority of delegates needed to win the Democratic Party's nomination to be our next president of the United States. The vast majority of my senators quickly and enthusiastically endorsed her. So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm clapping. You don't have to. It's a happy day. What can I say? Together, we will keep and hopefully grow the Senate majority, and under future Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, we will win back the House. Democrats are moving forward stronger and more united than ever before. In just the last 36 hours, I have seen a surge of enthusiasm from every corner of our party uniting behind Vice President Harris. An enthusiasm felt in every corner of the country, and it's contagious among Democrats. The volunteers, the small contributions, they're just pouring in ways even beyond our expectations. Now, we all know that Vice President Harris has a tremendous record to run on. And now begins the next chapter in our quest to make sure Donald Trump does not become president. Today, with one voice, we speak about the dangers he presents to working families, to our country, and to our democracy. We see very clearly how nervous the Republicans are about our new nominee. Well, they ain't seen nothing yet.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, at a news conference on Capitol Hill, standing beside the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, who also endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for president.
President Joe Biden has made the selfless decision to pass the torch to Vice President Kamala Harris, who is ready, willing, and able to lead us into the future. Kamala Harris and her candidacy has excited and energized the House Democratic Caucus, the Democratic Party, and the nation. Vice President Harris has earned the nomination from the grassroots up and not the top down. She is ready, she is willing, she is able to energetically and emphatically lead America into the future. Kamala Harris is a common sense leader who knows how to deliver real results for hardworking American taxpayers. Kamala Harris is a courageous leader who has worked hard throughout her entire career to keep our communities safe. Kamala Harris is a compassionate leader who will build an affordable economy that makes life better for everyday Americans.
The House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, at today's news conference with the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York. The Congressional Black Caucus PAC Chair, Congressman Gregory Meeks, Democrat, also from New York, at a separate news conference endorsed Vice President Harris for president. Associated Press writes several state delegations met late Monday to confirm their support for Vice President Harris, including Texas and her home state of California. By Monday night, Harris had the support of well more than the 1,976 delegates she'll need to win on a first ballot, according to an AP tally. No other candidate was named by a delegate contacted by the AP. Still, the AP is not calling Harris the presumptive nominee. That's because the convention delegates are still free to vote for the candidate of their choice at the convention in August, or if Democrats go through with a virtual roll call ahead of that gathering in Chicago. That was from Associated Press. Washington Today continues in a moment.
As more people cancel cable TV, C-SPAN's funding is at risk. This summer, an anonymous donor has stepped up to help by matching all donations up to $25,000. I'm Caitlin with C-SPAN, and this means your gift will go twice as far. Your donation supports unfiltered access to government and public affairs programming, including the C-SPAN podcasts you value. Visit cspan.org/donate to make your gift today. Every dollar helps us reach our $25,000 goal. Thank you for listening and supporting C-SPAN. Donate today at cspan.org/donate.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast, wherever you find your podcasts, and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Some of the most senior foreign policy leaders in the Democratic Party, writes the Washington Post, endorsed Vice President Harris's bid for president on Tuesday, declaring in an open letter that she has more international experience than most recent incoming presidents and expressing confidence that she is the best qualified person to lead the country. The more than 350 signatories to the letter, which was obtained by the Washington Post, add to voices within the Democratic Party seeking to cement Harris's role as nominee following President Biden's withdrawal from his reelection bid on Sunday. They include former National Security Advisors Susan Rice and Thomas E. Donnellan, former Secretaries of State John F. Kerry and Hillary Clinton, former Secretaries of Defense Chuck Hagel and Leon Panetta, and former top intelligence officials Michael Hayden and James Clapper. That was from the Washington Post. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also praised Harris's foreign policy qualifications today, although did not formally endorse her. Secretary Blinken spoke to reporters at the State Department.
As you all know, I don't engage in politics. What I can tell you is this. I've known the Vice President for more than a decade. These last 3.5 years, I've been able to observe her very closely in the Situation Room, in the Oval Office, around the world. As a leading voice for American foreign policy and for our diplomacy. We've been together at the Munich Security Conference the last 3 years. I've seen her command the room full of world leaders from not only across Europe, but across the world. I think she's made 4 trips to the Indo-Pacific, helping to lead our diplomacy there. Deeply engaged in the Middle East and trying to find a peaceful path forward. Helping to drive investment in countries in our own hemisphere, so that people have opportunity in the countries that they come from, so that they don't have to make the hazardous journey to the United States seeking a better life, because they can get it in their own countries. In each and every one of these areas, she's been a leading voice in our administration. And what I've observed is someone who asks time and again the penetrating questions, who cuts to the chase and is intensely focused on the interests of the American people and making sure that our foreign policy is doing everything it can to advance those interests. And it's really been a privilege for me to see that up close these last 3.5 years.
Mr. Secretary, foreign policy is not Vice President Harris's forte, so has she been sort of learning on the job as you go? You described her approach. Tell us a little more about
Oh, I would say in my experience it very much is her forte, because as I said, I've seen her not only around the world, but I've seen her on the most critical foreign policy questions of our time in the Situation Room at the White House, in the Oval Office with the President. And my observation is she's a very strong, very effective, and deeply respected voice for our country around the world. When she speaks on behalf of the United States. And what I've observed in meetings that we've had with world leaders, I mentioned again the Munich Security Forum, where she really commands the room for these past 3 years. Just a couple of months ago, she of course represented the United States at the Ukraine Peace Conference that was being held in Switzerland. So time and again, I've seen her leadership in literally every corner of the world. Africa, where she's led major investment initiatives to strengthen our relationships and partnerships. So, no, what I've seen is someone who is already deeply experienced and very, very effective around the world.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaking to reporters today at the State Department. Spectrum News writes that House Republican leaders blasted Vice President Kamala Harris for missing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's joint address of Congress on Wednesday, accusing her of boycotting the speech. In her role as Senate President, Harris would normally sit behind foreign leaders who address Congress. She will instead deliver the keynote address at a Zeta Phi Beta sorority event in Indianapolis, an appearance she scheduled before Netanyahu set the date for his speech. Harris, the heavy favorite to be the Democratic presidential nominee after President Joe Biden announced Sunday he is dropping out of the race, will meet one-on-one with the Israeli Prime Minister Thursday. That was from Spectrum News. House Speaker Mike Johnson addressed this at his news conference today on Capitol Hill.
We have to be clear that Israel is not alone. It has never been more important than it is right now for us to stand with our closest ally in the Middle East and our traditional partner in all these things. And it is outrageous to me and inexcusable that, as the leader mentioned, that Kamala Harris is boycotting this joint session. This is an historic moment. It's an important moment for the country for all the reasons we've said. The gravity of the situation cannot be overstated. And yet, Kamala Harris will abandon her seat. As you all know, as the Vice President and as serving as the President of the Senate, she is supposed to be seated next to me at the rostrum. She will not be there because she refuses to attend. She needs to be held accountable for that, and she needs to be asked very searing questions about why. They went down the roster to find out who else would sit in the seat. Senator Patty Murray declined the opportunity as well. She will also boycott the event, skip the speech. They landed on Senator Cardin, who is retiring from the Senate, so has little political risk. The idea that they're making political calculations when our ally is in such dire straits, fighting for its very survival and fighting back against the horrific attack in October is unconscionable to us. America's relationship with Israel has always been bipartisan, and it should stay that way.
House Speaker Mike Johnson at a news conference. He referenced Senator Ben Cardin that will be sitting beside the Speaker at tomorrow's speech. Ben Cardin, Democrat from Maryland, is the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to a joint meeting of Congress is Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Listen live on C-SPAN Radio or watch on C-SPAN Television or follow it on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. The White House says that President Biden will meet with the Prime Minister on Thursday, after which the two will meet with families of Americans held hostage by Hamas. President Biden has returned to the White House. His doctor, Kevin O'Connor, says the president's symptoms have resolved after the president tested positive for COVID-19 last week. Former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee this year, posting on Truth Social that Prime Minister Netanyahu will meet with him at his home and private club Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida on Friday. Donald Trump writing, "During my first term, we had peace and stability in the region, even signing the historic Abraham Accords, and we will have it again. Just as I have said in discussions with President Zelensky and other world leaders in recent weeks, my Peace Through Strength agenda will demonstrate to the world that these horrible, deadly wars and violent conflicts must end. Millions are dying, and Kamala Harris is in no way capable of stopping it." The House Foreign Affairs Committee held a roundtable discussion today with family members of American hostages in Gaza. John Pollan, father of Hirsch Goldberg Pollan, answered a question from the chair, Michael McCall, Republican of Texas, about what message he would like the congressman to give the Israeli Prime Minister when the two meet.
In answer to your question about what message we would like you to convey, the message is as follows. I'm sure that Mr. Netanyahu is going to speak to the joint session tomorrow about all of the credible, real, existential threats to the state of Israel. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran, and on and on and on. All legitimate, scary threats. But we are in a triage situation. We have 120 hostages, at least half of whom are likely no longer alive, flailing and bleeding out on the emergency room floor. Now is not the time to go up to the cancer ward and deal with the sick people who need treatment when there are people dying right now on the floor of your hospital. First you do triage, then you deal with all of the other legitimate issues. And more than that, it has been and is still our belief that in a very tense Middle East, the single event that could happen right now to be most influential on releasing pressure across all fronts in the region is bring home the hostages. It will calm down the north with Hezbollah, it will calm down Gaza, and it will allow the region to deal with the legit, credible, big threats in a more controlled manner. And so it's got to be the priority to bring home these hostages.
John Pollan, father of Hirsch Goldberg Pollan, one of the known American hostages held by Hamas, before the House Foreign Affairs Committee today, a roundtable discussion. From Associated Press, Palestinian factions Hamas and Fatah agreed in Beijing to form a government together, the group said Tuesday, in the latest attempt at resolving a long-standing rivalry that looms over any potential vision for the rule of Gaza after the war with Israel. U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller was asked about it at his news conference.
China's foreign ministry said that Hamas and Fatah agreed to end their divisions and form an interim national unity government during negotiations in China that ended today. What's your take on this agreement?
So we have not yet reviewed the text of the so-called Beijing Declaration. Of course, we will do that. But as we have made clear for months, Hamas is a terrorist organization, something that we obviously made clear before October 7th. But when it comes to governance of Gaza at the end of the conflict, there can't be a role for a terrorist organization. Hamas has long been a terrorist organization. They have the blood of innocent civilians, both Israeli and Palestinian, on their hands. And so when you look at the post-conflict governance of Gaza, we do see, as we have made clear, we want to see the Palestinian Authority governing a unified Gaza and the West Bank, but no, we do not support a role for Hamas.
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller at his news conference at the State Department in Washington. And this is Washington Today. On Wall Street, the Dow down 57, NASDAQ down 10, S&P down 8. U.S. House today took up another fiscal year 2025 spending bill for energy and water programs. A second spending bill for Interior and the Environment will come up tonight and could be passed on Wednesday. An article from CQ Roll Call says that if both of these bills pass, the House will have passed half of the dozen annual appropriations bills worth nearly 75% of next year's total of $1.6 trillion funding allotment. Article says they could be the last spending bills the House takes up before the August recess. Leaders are considering canceling votes next week and starting the recess early as they face an uphill battle regarding the other annual measures. Some of the debate on the House floor today, Congressman Chuck Fleischmann, Republican of Tennessee, chairs the Appropriations Subcommittee for Energy and Water.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to bring the fiscal year 2025 Energy and Water Bill to the floor today. The bill provides a total of $59.2 billion to advance our commitment to national security, energy security, and economic competitiveness. The bill delivers strong support for our national defense and provides $25.5 billion for the National Nuclear Security Administration. The bill prioritizes nuclear weapons activities, fully funding all major stockpile modernization activities, and providing additional funds for plutonium pit production and the nuclear sea-launched cruise missile. At the Department of Energy, the bill supports programs that advance our nation's energy security and ensure America remains at the forefront of scientific discovery and innovation. This includes strong funding for nuclear energy, including additional funds specifically for nuclear demonstration projects, the Office of Science, including fusion energy sciences and the full spectrum of mining production technologies to reduce our reliance on foreign sources of critical minerals. The bill also includes a number of provisions to protect American resources and intellectual property from falling into the hands of foreign adversaries. Funding for the Corps of Engineers totals $9.96 billion, including full funding of the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund activities and the highest priority, ongoing Inland Waterways Trust Fund construction projects to ensure the safe and efficient flow of commerce. Funding for the Bureau of Reclamation totals $1.93 billion, prioritized to projects that increase water supply and support drought resilience. This is a strong bill that builds on the work we started in fiscal year 2024. I urge members to support it. I reserve the balance of my time.
Congressman Chuck Fleischmann, Republican from Tennessee, chair of the Energy and Water Appropriations Subcommittee, debating his bill on the House floor. Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, Democrat from Ohio, is the subcommittee ranking member.
Our nation is projected to grow to 400 million people by 2050, 3 times more people than following World War II. Our bill must catch up to the future, not backpedal. Sadly, this Republican energy and water bill does not meet our nation's imperative for the future. America must become energy independent in perpetuity. Their bill slow walks our nation's obligation to assure modern, dependable, affordable energy and clean water for millions of our citizens. Thus, it fails to embrace a modern and more secure future. We cannot behave as though it is 1950. This energy and water bill cuts $1.5 billion, or 43%, from the Department of Energy's energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. They are essential to meeting our nation's new challenges due to weather-related disasters, as we witness home and commercial business insurance rates rising all across our country. This bill revokes $8 billion from the Department of Energy's loan programs. A cut of this size would immediately constrict the Department of Energy's ability to spur American manufacturing and innovation in this new climate age. The bill also slashes the Weatherization Assistance Program, resulting in approximately 54,000 fewer low-income homes receiving weatherization services across our country. And let me be clear, the cuts in this bill will absolutely jeopardize innovation to achieve American energy independence and security. These cuts will hurt, and these cuts will increase energy costs for millions of our fellow citizens, including families and seniors struggling to make ends meet. This bill pushes our nation backwards.
Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, Democrat from Ohio, today on the House floor. And as we go to air, the House has been working on this bill and lots of amendments to it throughout the day. A final vote on the bill is expected tonight, and then they move on to another fiscal year 2025 spending bill, Interior and the Environment. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Subscribe to C-SPAN's free evening newsletter word for word. You'll get the stories making headlines in Washington sent to your inbox every day. Sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.